where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
I want you to imagine that you're in a courtroom and this trial that's about to take place is for one of the most notorious strip clubs in Atlanta. And he gives the judge, Judge Hunt, gives this attorney the courtroom for his opening statement. And he takes him, and the attorney's taking a while, and the judge urges the attorney to go ahead and get on with it. And this attorney stands on top of an empty table, takes off his shirt, and begins twirling this shirt around helicopter style. Now here he made dancing gestures and said loudly, "I am the only woman of 2,000 that Steve Kaplan has hired to do this on trial here." About 5 seconds into his theatrics, the judge orders this attorney down and to keep his feet on the floor. And this attorney parades down into the middle of the courtroom gallery, and he starts asking rhetorical questions of the spectators. "How are you doing? Buy me a drink? What are you in town for?" This idea of what we're talking about today is Mark Sewell's book, investigating America's most notorious strip clubs, and this is the FBI, Gold Club, and the Mafia, and a lot of people may wonder why I read this book, and in terms of the renovation of society, why would we even want to discuss such matters? But in terms of really the darkest parts of society, I believe it sheds light in how America acts in these cases, and really how when things operate, I suppose, how they're supposed to. Really, this is where we see America operate at its best in these particular circumstances. Now, when it comes down to the FBI doesn't normally take on, cases like this, but in regards to anything that is mafia related, the FBI will gear up and go after whoever or whatever needs to be gone after. And when it comes down to this world of strip clubs, it's important that really we see a spectrum of crimes committed, and this can easily range from prostitution to credit card fraud, and this is something that is really it really sheds light on really what's possible in this particular environment, or what becomes more possible in this particular environment, and how brazen a lot of people get when people, or a lot of people get in these particular environments to commit these crimes, but also like how clueless and or unattentive you become when you are in these environments in terms of really the victims involved. Now, the owner of this particular establishment is Steve Kaplan, and he's thought to have significant mob ties, specifically with John Gotti and John Gotti Jr. Mark Sewell, the author of this book, is like he's an FBI agent, and really, when it comes down to understanding really when it came down to the FBI, a lot of agents with the FBI, they have apparently this dream list, and this is like this dream assignment list, and they list up to 54 places where they want to really be assigned to, and Atlanta was number 13 on his list. He openly considers himself lucky in the fact of him getting assigned to this case, but also assigned to really to be on a team with seasoned investigators. These guys had a pretty big had a pretty big rap sheet already in terms, or a pretty big list of experiences in the background already. Without this, but this was big to see. This turned out to be a really big assignment, especially for a newbie. When it comes down to like investigating the idea of investigating this strip club, it came down to a number of things. But of course, it's a perfect place if you want to catch somebody, or if you want to basically like. In terms of the mob's involvement, it seemed that this place became kind of a symbol, it molded itself after the mob in so many different ways of like really the brazen crimes that took place, and it was really something to think that like you imagine those places are normally dim lit, dark, but to think about what takes place is pretty wild when you really dig into it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And one thing that's like this lack of attention is like it's almost like they incentivize people to pay less attention, and the idea of the true cost of going to a strip club. They make it clear in terms of calling people, or basically like when it comes down to the strippers, viewing people, based on their status in society, and how they were able to like pick out like, oh, that's a certain type of watch, certain type of shoes, kind of, and categorizing people on such a basis. Like, white collar workers, blue collar workers. they categorize these people in such a way to where, okay, we can probably, this person, we can probably get this amount of money from them or that amount of money. And it's very, it really, really, like, it makes a difference in these places in terms of financially, how much can we really squeeze out of this guy? And of course, when it comes down to high rollers, they're not going to notice, some money going missing when they go to the strip club, and they're not going to necessarily. They're not going to be specific about the money that they spend. Even more so than these regular guys or regular Joes. I forget what they call them, but they literally have like names for these guys. It's pretty, or like names according to the social standing of these particular people. And not to blame this isn't in any way to blame the strippers involved or but the idea of really categorizing people, like a lot, like this is a real thing in terms of being able to see how much money they can get from each individual customer, boiling down to how much that boiling down to really what wristwatch this guy's wearing, or what, trying to gauge a person's social standing in society. Very big. When it came down to this idea of opening investigation, these guys, this group and this task force, it started with a list of people, and it turned out that people who already had a PO were really golden in terms of these people are already responsible to their to like law officials. They can't legally can't lie to law officials, and the parole office was essentially, it was a great place to introduce them to the idea of investigating anything that they may be involved in. When it came down to building the case, like these guys were like, at some point they got video evidence by through next door neighbors, and the idea of I think it was like some kind of Wells Fargo or bank that was closed down, and they were able to turn the camera just a little bit and use that place to spy, or to basically get video evidence that they needed to in particular cases. But other than that, when it came down to having people on the inside and what the light that they shed, like these are like having informants on the inside was really valuable to them. And this idea was like there were scores of like people that were able to really verify, like, oh, okay, they had down identification was important in terms of really being able to like associate this stripper with this particular government name, or this particular, like just people in general also. But like the element of the crimes that took place, like it was pretty blatant for a lot of people. In terms of this idea of credit card fraud, for one, was crazy because somebody could essentially write down an $11 tip, but then when it goes to the cash register, that becomes $1,100, and you know, eight becoming $800. It was pretty crazy in terms of the credit card fraud that was allowed, but that wasn't the only thing. When it came down to the girls would, of course, charge in terms of per hour, and make people pay up front per hour, but also like this idea of like ordering drinks. There was like I don't even know how this is possible, but when it came down to like ordering drinks, sometimes the bartender or the girl would like put a drink down or put drinks like across the table, of course, in terms of give everybody a drink, but then somehow like get drinks back on the platter before like she went to the bar and had people order it again. It's pretty crazy. Like I think at some point like there was like some girl that was known to like she was like back and forth with the same drink like 16 times or something like that, and like she made she kind of made a name for herself because like nobody gets away that many times, but she does. But it was like amazing in the sense of what was allowed in that particular regard, but also like when it came down to like incentivizing people to sell or incentivizing girls to sell drinks, but also that wasn't just putting the drink or the shot glass back onto the platter. A lot of times like it involved actually pouring out pouring out drinks, and this was like at some point like Steve, the owner, Steve Kaplan, he was like literally he was literally like caught bragging to other people about him having the most expensive carpet in America, and like it's pretty like it was very much like very much known like that the more drinks that somebody was able to sell, of course, the more money they made that night. And that was one of the things when it came down to actually allowing for this. This wasn't like isolated in the club in terms of really the outreach here. A lot of people like the idea of they corrupted a law official that would warn them when permanent inspections were coming up. They corrupted some people. I think it was Red Jackets that were on Delta, or Red Jackets with Delta, to like ship people in and send people out when they needed to. And this guy Steve Kaplan was like, he had some pull with the mafia, and the idea was he was kind of a what do you call it? He was just kind of a golden goose for the mafia when it came down to it, and what like this element of him owning businesses. He owned businesses also in New York, and that's where like they're kind of home bases in New York, right? But he was very gifted at owning businesses in terms of and being able to extract money from businesses for the mafia and for the mafia's purposes. And when it came down to really prosecuting this guy, they like there is like it's a lot of things involved in terms of actually like getting people to the stand, but this element of the DAs, the defense attorneys, they were like, of course, in the opening we talk about this one guy like kind of making a show, but it seemed as if like this element of kind of knowing what you can and can't get away with became really important in terms of dealing with judges, because the judges, they're essentially the architects of the courtroom and the court case in general, right? And in terms of being the architects, like there was literally there was literally a moment where you had to. There was a, at some point he starts to control whether where these people can and cannot sit in terms of the front row, and he was also important. Or he's also had to. There was a point to where like the organization of the case itself, how it was presented and things like that. I think this was also the prosecution as well, but when it came down to like really presenting this case and what took place, this guy had a lot of pull when you think about a case, the jurors in terms of this goes into the psychology of what they're able to hear from who when they're able to hear it. It becomes really, really like understanding that becomes even more important. And the idea of what a judge would be able to do in terms of how he can control outcomes it's far-reaching beyond simply, what's written on paper. In terms of the DAs, they were like, they would see where they can get away with, but also like an important element of what they do was looking for dirt wherever they can find it. And at some point, like the guy, Mark, decides to like literally go home at a reasonable time, and the idea is if he doesn't, then the DAs could probe him and accuse him of taking part in essentially ruining his standing with the court and with the in the trial period, in terms of being able to question his character in general. I think when it came down to like really gathering witnesses, one thing that was really stuck out to me was the idea of there were good witnesses who were, and a lot of stars visited of course the strip club. And at some point it said like I think it's the 53rd team of or like the NBA or something like that. I forgot what he said exactly, but essentially like this was known, like celebrities visiting these places was a regular occurrence. And when it came down to really like the FBI investigating and trying to pull up witnesses, of course they'd go after some of these celebrities, and some of them were like known like anti-law to the point to where like they get this guy, or they get like some kind of statement in front of this guy saying, hey, look, we'll absolve you from particular crime or from these crimes if you can basically give us some good information. And There were some cases where that didn't quite like it didn't matter. It was just an element of, hey, look, you know, I'm not going to cooperate with you, and that being kind of a statement for some of these guys, and some would gladly cooperate, but it was a case by case basis for a lot of these guys. When it came down to like a pivotal moment of in terms of actually like getting together a lot of this stuff for the prosecution was the raid itself, and like really how they went in, how they picked up a lot of these guys. Some people, they would get like in the middle of sleep, they would start like kind of, or not in the middle of sleep, but like just waking up, they would start to question them about, you know, certain things. And they got some pretty good information off of, you know, simply the strength of approaching people at the right time. When it came down to like other than celebrities, you'd have people like who is it? You'd have like the ex-girlfriends of the manager and this other guy that was heavily involved, informing on a lot of what they did, and it was like in terms of like prosecution, star witnesses, like these guys were, in terms of the exes, were particularly good in this case because, I mean, they knew a lot. They started like recording. Some of them like suspected, or one of them expected cheating, so they started like literally, they had like literal recordings to give, and it was so crazy. But they were able to like essentially, this person who essentially like started recording based on the idea of maybe this guy's cheating on me, and that became court evidence. And it was pretty crazy, but I think the trial was crazy in general. I mean, of course, you know, you got the guy taking off his shirt and essentially like making a show in the middle of the courtroom, or the attorney literally doing this in the courtroom, and that being kind of a thing. But also like kind of you see where like a lot of these mob attorneys, they would be like they'd make a, you know, at some point they made a big deal about like kind of being pushed papers to or something like that, and it became something in the headlines, and the media was of course all over like a lot of aspects of the cases, but they were essentially able to control what they focused on and what became a story for them, and that became a thing. That became literally like, oh, this guy decides to, you know, throw a tape at the attorney, and that being kind of the story. When it came down to failure, of course, they failed with a lot of celebrities to get them in that chair to be in, to inform. But also, when it came down to they also got red alerts because some of the people they informed, or they were essentially like asking to be informants, would go back and tell, or would likely go back and tell. And the idea is some of these people were simply, anti-police, but also they were very loyal to the idea of Steve Kaplan. Like this guy is like, he was known for things like, okay, I'm gonna pay your rent this month, and it's okay if you don't have it, and essentially being able to kind of gained favor with a lot of people through this, through whatever. And one dancer was like known for like credit, or was really good at credit card fraud, and she lived in a mansion. Like, it was just her name on the lease, and or not on the lease, but on the she owned the place, and it was so crazy. I think it was like $1 million mansion or something like that, but she essentially was able to, or she was able to own that place, and it was hers. It wasn't like, oh, okay, like a lot of these, like her essentially being able to become, or to have this status in society based on the idea of her being, or how good she was with taking money from other people in this particular establishment, became it was I mean, it's crazy to think about, but I mean, essentially, they were really creating like people who were very, very well taken care of at this particular place. Let me see. In terms of one thing that was also of note was management, or the records for what's taken, or when something kind of extra occurred with celebrities. That was something that, or with celebrities or whoever had status, management was given like kind of a list of records. This guy Steve Kaplan, like I'm pretty sure we have, like, in terms of realizing who you want to curry favor with, I don't think this book is. I think this is it's a great book, and I think this guy Mark Swell is probably a good agent. But in terms of like keeping names out of places, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy had notes, and there were other people that essentially got their name removed from records, and just kind of realizing how society operates. With the CIA is, essentially, like, the CIA is the mob for the president. That's essentially what they are, and the idea of like being able to go in and have a place like this, or them being involved in a place like this, I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit. In terms of having like people who are responsible for making some pretty major decisions being involved in some way, shape, or form. And that is kind of a personal opinion. It's not something that was listed in the book. It was at some point, Mark Swell makes it a point to question why, or to kind of note that the judge decides to go easy on these guys, or to go like or he admits to going easy on the prosecution, and the element of why becomes kind of a. It's something that the reader's left with, but in the same gate, or in the same space, I really think that the reader should question beyond the judge what is on the thing. The idea is we still don't have Epstein's list. These guys are essentially, beyond the crime of, regular, when it comes down to like what they're able to do with this place, I'm pretty sure the the people who reviewed this book made sure that some names didn't appear and some ideas didn't appear. I mean, I'm not pretty. I'll say it's my personal opinion that we don't see everybody that's on this list. Judge Hunt did make a thing out of, or it was kind of noted that the media had a space in the courtroom, and this was a particular, like, the media, regardless of, how they reported, they were allowed there. And I think we need to. I think that's a good piece of information, and a good or basically this is where we want the media, essentially, is in the courtrooms to report on matters like this. When it came down to like this judge or this case in particular, they went through a lot of evidence with a lot of different people, and you've seen that the DA really, like I said, they played dirty pretty much. They were willing to play dirty, and of course their opening statements, as you know, basically it was a lot of the idea was they were able to do, or it was kind of regular, it's practice for a lot of these guys to poke holes where they can be poked, including with like actual, when it came down to like actual people on the stand or witnesses on the stand. And a lot of us watch Law and Order. We're not, or a lot of us are aware of court cases and how court cases, and how the lawyers act in those particular cases. When it came down to a lot of the informants that the ex-girlfriends were great, but also the mob people who were in the mob, they were able to inform on this, and they played pretty key roles in this particular trial. Like, they were able to kind of link some pieces as well. But in the end, Steve Kaplan, he got a plea deal. And he got a plea deal that was kind of a surprise, or that was a surprise to a lot of people involved, including Mark. The people who were like really leading on the prosecution, stuff like that, were supposedly surprised, but he got a plea deal, and he didn't serve. I think he didn't serve that much. I think he pleaded guilty to some taxes that he didn't. That some taxes that he didn't no, I'm thinking of another person. But the idea is, I think he spent he didn't spend a significant amount of time in prison. And it was kind of weird to see this plea deal take place in the middle of, kind of out of nowhere, but you can only assume, and having this plea deal take place, it kind of lines up with the theory of maybe there were more people that this guy could have essentially, instead of this plea deal was on the table because of who he could have potentially became, rather than, but he could have informed on in terms of, oh, these guys were involved, of, and that is that's it's kind of, it's insane to think that someone who was involved with accumulating the evidence to be surprised by, or and so close to the case to be, or in terms of actually, going on the stand and being like so intimately involved in the case, being surprised by the idea of a plea deal being, kind of agreed to. But it also makes sense because, some of these guys are good, like when it comes down to like a lot of, or not, I won't assume a lot, but I will assume that when it comes down to really where, like being, when it comes down to like repairing society, I think the idea of being accurate is or being kind of precise, not accurate but precise as well. When it comes down to who was over the prosecution, in this case, like I think Art Leach was his name in terms of the lead prosecutor, in terms of this guy and this owner of this club being able to strike up a deal. It's not hard to imagine that this guy could have become an informant and led to some problems for some people in some pretty high places. And it's definitely, he kind of makes it a thing to suggest, to say, oh, this judge this judge was easy on the prosecution. And but when it comes down to, getting or cutting out corruption in a lot of these places, of course, it's very likely that a lot of these guys don't recognize when they're working with, when they're working under like corrupt official, or they're working under corrupt official, until that point to where they wake up, they go to court, the guy you've been chasing has struck up a plea bargain with people who are, essentially above you in the hierarchy. I think when it came down to like sentencing for this guy, and I think Steve had this idea of the plea bargain. I think he got some favor with this idea of like 9/11 and what he was doing in terms of being a patriotic person, with like businesses in New York, with his businesses in New York and stuff like that. But also, the plea bargain itself saved Steve Kaplan from being prosecuted in the future for some, like, I think, I forget what the wording, but the idea was like, hey, any crimes known about previous to the plea agreement, we're going to go ahead and throw that under the bus now. And I think they were going after one of his attorneys, and the idea was this was a mob attorney, and at some point he mentioned like something out of a scene of a movie, to where like this guy turns on every single, like he's in the bathroom with somebody, and he apparently at some point realizes this is probably an informant, and he turns on the sinks to like drown out noise from like a wire that he's wearing. and he says he makes some kind of note on his hand, and the note or note on not on his hand but on like he I want to say he inscribed a note on his watch. It's like, say hi to whoever it's the new top official for the FBI, or the new top agent for the FBI, or something like that. And at some point, this guy he becomes the center of investigation, and like Steve would have gone down with him, but the deal that he struck was essentially it led to him being free in terms of a lot of different crimes, which is, in terms of the deal that he struck, was, I mean, it's like he got a pass. He got a pass for it, and he passed crimes as well, and that is it's very. I mean, it's worrisome to think, but it like the idea of thinking you're working for the good guys for so long, and then it turns out you wake up and realize that the bad guys and the good guys aren't really on different teams. It's crazy. This and I'm looking through my notes, making sure I got everything so far. Very very when it comes down to like how these guys went about chasing them, and what they did, it when it came down to finding informants and having a solid starting place, very, very noteworthy is the idea of, the people who were already kind of in that system being the best place to start. And when it came down to this lawyer under investigation, he didn't get a lot of time either. And it was kind of, I mean, I don't know, like you get like, a smack, like it kind of felt like a smack on the wrist when I think it was like, not even, I want to say it might have been like less than a year, more than a year, but the idea of, I keep going back to Whitney Webb's book, and how the idea of power or being powerful, or a status for your signature, or for your status in society, really being that what crimes can you get away with, or how much can you violate the law, and that being kind of a direct indicator of how important you are in this society. And a lot of people say things like, "Oh, hey, nobody's above the law," and that's clearly not the case. And this is it's a sad truth. It's a very sad truth, but it's one that we really have to live with. And when it comes down to like this guy Mark Sewell, he sounds like a great agent, and like he'd do really good at his job. And that's important, like in terms of really, really marketing, this idea of waking up and being subjected to the, being subjected to the idea that I've been chasing after the bad guys when they're on the same team as the people who are above me, you know. Pretty crazy, but I think that's why you really have to be precise when it comes down to this element of when it comes down to the renovation of society, because when we're precise, I think there is these guys, there's an element of knowing when the laws work, or when this society, or how the society is supposed to work. And a lot of people that are currently entrenched in society are well aware of how society should work. And really being more precise is going to get us kind of these type of investigators on our side, and the good guys that are in the system on our side, rather than essentially, hey, look, everything, saying blanket statements about everything being bad. This is very destructive to the people. Of course, the people who are in the system have they have a function, they have relationships with people who are essentially really good in nature. They just being a part of they may be guilty of just being part of a system that is that has a higher that has people at the top of any hierarchy being corrupted. But there's things that we need to look for in terms of to actually save in particular. All right, that's me off my high horse. I am Sleepy, your bookman for this report, and when it comes down to this book is by Mark Sewell, and this is investigating America's most notorious strip club, the FBI, the Gold Club, and the Mafia. And thank you. Hope to see you soon.